Okay, so this video is going to be quick. I'm just going to show a potential way of refactoring this. So because I want to preserve this original file for other students, I'm going to make a new file, and I'll just call this one v2.py and paste all the code in there. But I'm going to make a couple changes. So I don't like having all these ands all over the place. So what I'm going to do instead is refactor things to look like this. So if player1 equals rock, then inside we're going to nest the other player2 possibilities. Rather than linking them together with an and, I'm going to have if player1 equals rock, and then inside of there, if player2 equals, and we'll start off with scissors. And if that's the case, then we will print player1 wins. Okay, so we've covered this line, and now we can move on to the next one. So I'm going to just delete this. So hopefully you can see how we can rewrite an and statement with two nested conditionals. And the reason to do this is so we don't have to rewrite if player1 equals rock multiple times. So we can actually just copy this right here and do an if player2 equals paper. If that's the case, then we're going to print player2 wins. Okay, so that covers the scenarios where player1 plays rock, aside from a tie. So we'll add that later. So next up is if player1 plays paper. So that's these two. So we'll start with if player2 equals rock, then player1 wins. Basically, I'm just copying things over and rewriting them. So then after that, we have if player2 is scissors. If that's the case, then we're going to print player2 wins because scissors beats paper. And I should make this an elif. And then we'll have another one. This time it's player1 equals scissors. And if that's the case, the first thing we'll check is if, and I should actually make all of these elifs, well, not all of them, but the ones that follow an if, because only one of these is going to be true anytime. It won't break our code, but it's just better to do it this way. So elif player equals scissors. If player1 or player2 is rock, then that means player1 wins because rock beats scissors. Okay, then after that we have if player2 played paper. So we have an elif player2 equals paper. If that's the case, player1 wins. Perfect. And looking at this is a really minor thing, but we have a pattern of player1 wins, then player2, player1 wins, then player2. And here we switch them. This might sound crazy, but I kind of want to switch them so we keep that pattern going so it's organized in a logical way. So all I did was just change the bottom two, the if and elif, around. So now paper and then rock, meaning player1 wins, then player2 wins, but it doesn't make a difference as far as our code. Okay, so then we can add in our elif. If player1 equals player2, then we'll print it's a tie. And then we have our final else that prints something went wrong. Now there's a change I want to make, which is to bring this to the top. So this is sort of the most common scenario because there's three different ways of achieving this draw. So what I'm going to do is actually move it up to the very beginning and say if player1 equals player2, just like this, print it's a tie, and I'm going to make this an elif. And so if it's a tie, then we're not even going to bother checking any of this because these are elifs. Remember, these are only even run. The conditionals are checked only if the first if is false. So if it's true, we're kind of short-circuiting it and we're done, rather than continuing to check all of these. And the reason it matters is because a draw, there's three ways of achieving that. And so we might as well just get it out of the way up here. But it's just a stylistic thing as well. It's not going to change how things work in our actual game. Okay, and then we have our else, which is, if somebody types something other than rock, paper, scissors, we're not really going to add in real error handling. Once we learn about looping, we'll actually be able to tell a user, enter a new move, you entered an invalid one, and we can keep asking them to enter something valid until they actually do. But for now, this game just goes once. Okay, let's see if we have any syntax errors first. So that's going to be Python 3 v2. And yes, it looks like we're missing a colon on line 11 right there. Where else? Right here. And I think that's it. Let's check now. Okay, player 1, make your move. Player 1 plays rock. Player 2 plays scissors. So player 1 wins. Let's do paper versus paper. It's a tie. And let's do scissors versus paper. No, let's do versus rock. Ooh, and good thing we ran that one because I have another typo. If you look at this, it's saying that it doesn't know what player is. And maybe you caught this before me, but I'm actually referencing a variable player rather than player 1. And we weren't ever encountering a problem until I actually entered scissors for player 1, because otherwise only this code was running. Okay, the last thing, well, let's just make sure that works now. So if I type scissors versus rock, everything works. And let's see if we enter gibberish. Something went wrong. Perfect. And what about if only one player enters gibberish? So the first one says rock, and the second one enters gibberish. Nothing happens. So this is worth noting. The way that our code is set up right now is that, so if player 1 enters rock and player 2 enters gibberish, well, this is going to be triggered, and then this runs. And if nothing is printed out because player 2 entered gibberish, then nothing is printed out, period. Because the way this is set up, that we have this as an else, so it's only going to run if none of this is true. So just worth noting, we'll learn much better ways of handling user input and error checking and that sort of thing. And I'm not going to refactor everything right now. So a solution that we could add up top would be an additional check where we could say if player 2, I won't do the whole thing, is equal to rock, or player 2 is equal to paper, or player 2 is equal to scissors, then we'll do all of this. Else, as a separate else, then we would say, okay, player 2, you didn't enter something valid. But for now, we'll just leave it at this. Just know that there's a little bit of a shortcoming with our code if both players enter gibberish. Last thing, if we want to add that little shield, we can just add a print statement here that says something like no cheating. And I guess we haven't seen this, but we can actually multiply strings. So this will just run this 20 times, but on its own, that's not going to be that impressive because it will be on the same line. But if we add our \n, now let's take a look. Remember, that's the escape sequence that adds a new line, a carriage return. So rock versus paper, so it's still not quite long enough. So we could just add in 2 returns. Now let's try it. Let's go paper versus scissors. Player 2 wins. And player 2 wasn't able to see what player 1 entered. Okay, so next up is the advanced version with a random computer AI.